Longest Yard is a classic American sports comedy drama film released in 1974. Directed by Robert Aldrich and produced by Albert S. Ruddy, it was a blend of prison drama with an intense football game. This action-packed and humorous movie has some fascinating behind-the-scenes episodes that many don't know. Stay with us as we dive into 20 weird facts about The Longest Yard. Number 20. The film was full of real football players, including Burt Reynolds. The Longest Yard's cast is famously stacked with real professional football players, including Green Bay Packer, Hall of Famer Ray Nitschke, and Purvis Atkins, who had played with the LA Rams and the Oakland Raiders. It is also well known that Burt Reynolds, the star of the movie, was a football player at Florida State University and retained a passion for the game throughout his life. In fact, according to an ESPN article, young Reynolds dreamed of playing for the NFL before a knee injury sidelined his career. He was known to wear his FSU ring until his passing in 2018. Yes, before his rise to Hollywood stardom, Burt Reynolds was on track to become a professional football player. He attended Florida State University in the 1950s on a football scholarship and played as a halfback. Reynolds was known for his athleticism, toughness, and explosive speed on the field. This background added a unique layer of authenticity to his role as Paul Wrecking Crew in The Longest Yard. In the film, Crew is a disgraced former professional quarterback who is sent to prison and coerced into organizing a football game between inmates and guards. Reynolds didn't need much acting preparation to understand the game or the mentality of a fallen athlete because he had lived it. The emotional resonance of that real-life disappointment made his performance in The Longest Yard more believable. Number 19. It may have been based on a real guards versus prisoners game. Though The Longest Yard's writers claimed the film was based on an original idea, many viewers have noted similarities between the film and a 1961 Hungarian film called 2 Half Times in Hell. However, both the latter and possibly The Longest Yard were based on a real soccer game that occurred in 1942. This game was between Nazi soldiers and Ukrainian amateurs living under Nazi occupation. Known as the Death Match, the real circumstances of the game share a plot point with The Longest Yard. The Nazi guards supposedly told the Ukrainians that they had to lose the game, a demand that the Ukrainians ignored, winning 5-3. However, the outcome was unlike what happened in The Longest Yard. Rather than winning the guards' grudging respect for being true to themselves, several members of the Ukrainian team were executed. So, while it may not be a 100% true story, The Longest Yard very likely drew from real-life examples of power struggles played out behind prison walls. Number 18. Burt Reynolds made friends with the real-life prisoners on set. The Longest Yard was shot in a real working prison, Georgia State Prison in Reidsville, Georgia. Filming was sometimes delayed due to conflicts among prisoners, though a guard interviewed on set in 1973 said that both guards and inmates took the filming seriously and really loved it. Although Reynolds was initially discouraged from fraternizing with the prison's convict population, he made a point to interact with the convicts, taking lunch with them and learning about life inside the prison. Throughout filming, he developed a connection with one prisoner in particular. He said in a 2018 interview, "I always make it a point to find out who is the toughest guy in the prison, and they tell me. And then I give him baby Ruths and other treats, anything he wants, and we got along well. His name was Ringo. I'll never forget." Years later, a man showed up outside the set of one of Reynolds' films. It was none other than Ringo himself. Reynolds was flabbergasted and said to him, "Ringo, what happened? Did you have good behavior or something?" Ringo replied, "Actually, I escaped." And Reynolds said, "Are they chasing you now?" And he said, "Oh yeah, I was wondering if I can get a couple of bucks from you." That was how much the film had affected him. Number 17. The actors played for real and got hurt for real. Unlike modern films that rely heavily on stunt doubles and camera tricks, much of the action in The Longest Yard was real contact. The actors were tackling, blocking, and hitting each other on the field. Burt Reynolds openly admitted in a 1973 on-set interview that they weren't faking it. He said, "The only way to make it look right is to just go out and hit." When the reporter asked if he had been hit himself, Reynolds responded bluntly, "A lot." As a former college football player, Reynolds was no stranger to the physical nature of the game, so he insisted on maintaining realism, even if it meant enduring bruises and injuries. Reynolds was not the only player whose physicality in the movie took a toll. One of the most noticeable on-set injuries happened to Richard Kiel, the 7'2" actor best known for playing the villain Jaws in James Bond films. Kiel played Samson, one of the towering inmate players. During filming, Kiel injured his arm, and in several shots he can be seen wearing it in a sling. These real injuries underscored the unpolished, gritty tone that director Robert Aldrich wanted. Unlike polished sports dramas, The Longest Yard doesn't just depict violence on the field, it lives it. Number 16. The film production left the football equipment behind, and the actual prisoners used it. When The Longest Yard wrapped up filming at Georgia State Prison, the cast and crew may have left more behind than just memories. According to multiple behind-the-scenes accounts and local rumors, the crew left behind almost everything, including pads, cleats, helmets, and jerseys. These items could still be used as props. The report said that much of the gear was authentic and functional, brought in to give the football scenes a realistic look and feel. However, the production team was generous enough to give those items as a long-lasting memory, although it left one of the strangest real-world consequences of the film's production. Reports suggest that the actual inmates began using the leftover football equipment for their own games and recreation after the production crew had departed. In an unexpected twist, prisoners at Georgia State Prison organized their own full-contact football matches, considering the movie's plot centers around inmates forming a team to play a violent football game against their guards. According to a 1988 article in Sports Illustrated, the real game quickly got out of hand, with inmates pummeling the out-of-shape troopers for their alleged arrogance. Morris, who coached the inmate team, said, "Here are these guys who couldn't play a lick, cussing us and saying what they were going to do to us." This proves that what happens in movies may not always be replicated in real life. Number 15. Burt Reynolds refused to see the remake, even though he was in it. Adam Sandler remade The Longest Yard with himself in the role of Paul "Wrecking Crew" and Reynolds as Nate Scarborough in 2005. However, Reynolds was not impressed with the production from the beginning because Sandler and company claimed that they would make the best version of the film. Reynolds told a reporter what he said to the Sandler crew at the time: "Well, good luck. And how many days am I working? 3 days?" I said, "Okay, and how much money is it?" "Okay, this is good." Though Reynolds suspected that the remake wouldn't surpass his original, he never actually confirmed it. He told USA Today in 2018, I didn't want to see it." Reynolds might have been onto something with skipping the remake in particular, though. While the 2005 version was a hit and had the largest opening weekend of any film Sandler ever made, Sandler still considers his 2005 version not even close to the original and said that the film made no sense. Number 14. Guards watched the set with loaded guns. Security was a constant and very real concern while filming The Longest Yard because the location was a real-life prison. The cast and crew were working among some of the most dangerous inmates in the United States, including convicted murderers and violent offenders. This can only mean that the set wasn't just protected by standard film security, but by armed prison guards carrying loaded weapons. Every day during filming, corrections officers patrolled the production site with rifles, shotguns, and sidearms ready to respond to any sign of trouble. This was necessary because the production involved allowing some prisoners near the film crew and cast, and even onto the football field as extras. The potential for unpredictable behavior was high. The guards were given strict orders to protect the film crew and maintain prison order at all costs. Burt Reynolds and director Robert Aldrich later described the filming conditions as unlike anything Hollywood had ever done before. This extraordinary level of realism gave The Longest Yard its raw feel. However, it came at the price of shooting in a genuinely risky environment. Number 13. Burt Reynolds broke his wrist during filming. While filming the brutal football scenes for The Longest Yard in 1974, star Burt Reynolds didn't just incur minor injuries, he suffered severe injuries as well. During one of the more intense moments on the field, Reynolds was tackled so hard that he broke his wrist. Instead of halting production or demanding a stunt to finish the scene, Reynolds chose to tough it out and keep going. This was because his background in football at Florida State University had prepared him for physical punishment. However, The Longest Yard was unlike any other film he had done. He once admitted in interviews, "We were really hitting out there. It wasn't fake." The football scenes weren't carefully choreographed Hollywood stunts, but often full contact. bone-jarring plays with real football players, stuntmen, and even prisoners hitting hard to maintain the film's gritty realism. Despite the wrist injury, Reynolds continued to film, enduring the pain while wearing a brace off camera. The producers and director were reportedly shocked by his decision to push through, but it only added to the movie's raw, authentic tone. The injury later became a symbol of Reynolds' dedication to realism and his determination to make the character of Paul Wrecking Crew believable as both a tough guy and a former athlete. Number 12. The movie's working title was The Mean Machine. Before it was officially released as The Longest Yard, the film had a very different working title, The Mean Machine. This title was also the nickname of the inmate football team led by Burt Reynolds' character Paul Wrecking Crew. In the film, Crew named the ragtag team of prisoners the Mean Machine. This was after whipping them into shape to face off against the oppressive prison guards in a full-contact football game. The Mean Machine effectively captured the rebellious tone of the story, which centers on a group of tough, downtrodden inmates rising through physical skill and sheer determination to challenge authority. This title became a powerful symbol of resistance and unity, and many fans of the film still refer to the team by that name. The producers ultimately chose The Longest Yard as the final title because it better reflected the metaphorical and literal journey the characters take. However, the original title wasn't discarded entirely. When the film was released in the United Kingdom, it retained the name Mean Machine for its theatrical run. The 2001 British remake starring Vinnie Jones took the title Mean Machine as a tribute to the original idea. So while The Longest Yard became the household name in the US, The Mean Machine still lives on. Number 11. The producer was a former pro football player. While Albert S. Ruddy is best known for producing cinematic giants like The Godfather, what many viewers don't know is that he was also a former athlete and had played semi-professional football earlier in life. This was one of the key reasons why The Longest Yard felt so authentic, especially in its depiction of football culture and locker room dynamics. Ruddy's background in football provided him with unique insight into the structure, mentality, and raw physicality of the game. Unlike many Hollywood producers, Ruddy understood that football wasn't just a sport. It was a culture of toughness, pride, ego, and loyalty. He brought that understanding to the script development, casting, and filming process. When Ruddy met with screenwriter Tracy Keenan Wynn, he was adamant that the film needed to reflect the real nature of the sport and the type of people who played it, particularly those who might be drawn into a violent and emotionally charged game inside a prison. This push for realism is why former athletes, real prisoners, and actual football coaches and coordinators were included in the cast. Ruddy's experience ensured the story hit hard, both emotionally and physically. His involvement was also crucial in balancing the film's dramatic core with hard-hitting football action. For Rudy, it wasn't just about rebellion and redemption. It had to look and feel like a real game. Number 10. The guards and prisoners didn't know the final score. Director Robert Aldrich kept the film's ending a secret even from the actors and extras by shooting multiple versions of the final football game. He didn't reveal who would ultimately win, the prisoners or the guards. This tactic helped prevent plot leaks, especially since real inmates were used as extras during the football scenes. Additionally, it created authentic reactions on set as the cast and crowd didn't know what was coming next. Aldrich's secrecy allowed for genuine tension during filming and gave him flexibility in editing to choose the most impactful conclusion. The uncertainty helped keep performances intense and raw, especially during the game's high-stakes moments. In the end, the prisoners' victory felt earned and powerful. However, that result wasn't guaranteed until post-production. Aldrich's strategy preserved suspense on set, which contributed to the film's unpredictable feel, both for audiences and for those who helped create it. Number 9. Eddie Albert was reluctant to play the warden. Eddie Albert delivered one of the most chilling performances of his career as Warden Hazen in The Longest Yard. He was the cold, calculating prison official who forced Paul Crew, played by Burt Reynolds, into organizing a football game between inmates and guards. However, what many fans don't know is that Albert was initially reluctant to take the role. This was because Albert was already known for his comedic, lighthearted roles, particularly from the TV series Green Acres. The idea of portraying a manipulative, sadistic, and power-hungry prison warden seemed out of character for the image he had cultivated. He feared that the audiences would not accept him in such a dark, dramatic role. Moreover, he wasn't sure if he wanted to play someone so cruel. However, director Robert Aldrich believed that Albert's clean-cut, all-American persona would make the character of Warden Hazen even more disturbing. The contrast between Albert's familiar, friendly image and the cruelty of his character would unsettle viewers and add a deeper psychological layer to the story. After trying so hard to convince him, Albert agreed, and the rest was history. His performance was so effective that many viewers were genuinely shocked by how convincingly he portrayed the icy, manipulative warden. He managed to portray Hazen as a deeply realistic and oppressive authority figure. Number 8. The Longest Yard was nominated for a Golden Globe Award. Despite its brutal football sequences, gritty prison setting, and rough humor, The Longest Yard achieved something few sports comedies could not imagine. It was critically acclaimed and even nominated for a prestigious Golden Globe Award. The film was recognized in 1975 in the category of Best Motion Picture, Musical, or Comedy. This proved that its mix of drama, humor, and rebellion struck a chord with both audiences and critics. At the time, sports films weren't typically considered award-worthy, especially the ones involving prisoners, corruption, and full-contact football. However, The Longest Yard broke that mold by balancing harsh social commentary with moments of genuine laughter and human connection. The film's success was largely driven by Burt Reynolds' magnetic performance and Robert Aldrich's tight direction. Even though it didn't win the Golden Globe, the nomination alone elevated the film's status. It demonstrated how comedy, when done with heart and purpose, could still be powerful and socially relevant. The nomination also helped solidify Burt Reynolds' status as a serious leading man with range and also added momentum to the film's already strong box office performance, contributing to its legacy as one of the most respected and beloved sports comedies ever made. Number 7. Burt Reynolds was dating co-star Bernadette Peters. During the filming of The Longest Yard, the lead actor Burt Reynolds was romantically linked to his co-star Bernadette Peters, adding a touch of real-life intrigue to the production. Peters, who played Miss Toot, the glamorous and manipulative secretary and crew's temporary love interest, had been gaining recognition for her roles in film, television, and Broadway. Her appearance in The Longest Yard was one of her early major film roles. Reynolds, at that time, was one of the most bankable and popular stars in Hollywood. He was very charming, athletic, and often referred to as a man's man. His relationship with Peter often made tabloid headlines off-screen, and their chemistry reportedly extended beyond the set. Though the relationship was never officially confirmed in detail by either party, several entertainment outlets at the time hinted at their off-screen closeness and affection during filming. Though Peters' screen time in the film was limited, her flirtatious interactions with Reynolds' character reflected some genuine chemistry. Their playful banter and sultry energy were small but memorable parts of the movie, helping to lighten the mood in a story filled with violence and tension. While their relationship didn't evolve into something long-term, this off-screen connection added an extra dimension to the film's legacy. In many ways, the blend of raw intensity exemplified the electric energy Reynolds often brought to his films. Number 6. The studio didn't expect it to be a hit. Despite having a bankable star like Burt Reynolds and a compelling premise, Paramount Pictures, the studio behind The Longest Yard, had low expectations for the film's success. Executives initially viewed it as a risky blend of genres, a prison drama, a sports film, and a dark comedy. Hollywood at the time was unsure whether audiences would connect with such an unconventional story that featured violent football scenes, hardened criminals, and a rebellious tone. Moreover, Reynolds was still climbing to the peak of his career. To the studio, this made The Longest Yard feel like a gamble, especially considering it was filmed in a real prison. To their surprise, the film became a massive box office success, grossing over $43 million in the US alone, which was a huge return for a film with a modest budget. It quickly became one of the top-grossing movies of 1974 and solidified Reynolds' place as a leading man. He got critical acclaim for his raw humor, powerful message, and gripping football action, making the audience respond enthusiastically. The unexpected success of The Longest Yard taught the industry a valuable lesson that audiences are often more open to bold, edgy storytelling than to mere studio credit. Number 5. A cheerleader scene featured real inmates in drag. One of the most unexpected but hilarious moments in The Longest Yard came during the big game when the inmate team, the Mean Machine, was cheered on by an unlikely group of supporters who were fellow prisoners dressed as cheerleaders. What most viewers didn't know was that those cheerleaders were actual inmates. The inmates volunteered to wear wigs, makeup, and makeshift uniforms just to make the scene a little outrageous, memorable, and utterly unique. This quirky moment added an unexpected touch of levity to the gritty prison setting. It showed that even behind bars, inmates were capable of humor, unity, and a little flamboyant creativity. The director of the movie, Robert Aldrich, accepted the absurdity of the scene as a way to lighten the mood while still maintaining the rebellious, chaotic energy of the film. According to accounts from the production, several real-life prisoners at Georgia State Prison were excited to take part in the film, even if it meant cross-dressing for laughs. Although the production team allowed it under careful supervision, the inmates' willingness to participate gave the scene a spontaneous, unscripted charm. Their dance moves and exaggerated cheers stood in stark contrast to the film's violent football action and serious power dynamics. While some critics found the scene jarring, many fans loved it for its boldness and campy humor. The scene later became one of the most talked about parts of the film, often cited as an example of the movie's fearless blend of comedy and chaos. Number 4. The movie was initially rejected by the NFL. Before the production of The Longest Yard, the executives approached the National Football League to support or associate with the film, but they refused. Known for guarding its image, the NFL wasn't eager to be linked with a movie that portrayed violent prison football and a game rigged by corrupt guards. At the time, the National Football League was still working to build and protect its reputation as a clean, family-friendly brand. Associating with a film that involved prisoners brutalizing guards on the field, even though it's fictional, was not something the league wanted. This decision forced the filmmakers to avoid using real NFL team names, logos, or any direct references to actual teams in the movie. Instead, the production leaned into fictional elements, focusing on Paul Crew's past as a shamed pro quarterback who shaved points, a subtle nod to gambling scandals that sports leagues were keen to keep out of the spotlight. Ironically, the NFL's refusal may have given the film even more creative freedom, allowing it to depict the unfiltered, raw side of football without corporate oversight. Although the NFL grew more open to dramatic portrayals in later years, its initial rejection of The Longest Yard became a part of the movie's renegade legacy. Number 3. It sparked an entire subgenre of sports inmate films. The Longest Yard was not just a hit but created a blueprint for a whole new kind of film, the sports prison mashup. Before the movie, no one had considered combining the intense emotional underdog story of sports with the claustrophobic world of prison life. However, once audiences and studios saw how effective that formula worked, it opened the door for an entirely new subgenre. The idea of inmates redeeming themselves through a high-stakes game against their oppressive guards proved to be a compelling narrative. It is a mix of rebellion, teamwork, justice, and redemption, all while delivering the physical thrills of a sports showdown. The success of The Longest Yard inspired filmmakers around the world to begin adapting to the idea of different cultures and settings. For example, the 2001 British film Mean Machine was a retake of The Longest Yard. It reimagined the story as a soccer match in a UK prison, becoming a cult favorite in its own right. Hollywood itself remade The Longest Yard in 2005, this time starring Adam Sandler and featuring cameos from real-life athletes and wrestlers. TV shows borrowed their framework, sometimes satirically, sometimes seriously. Even outside of football or sports entirely, the idea of prisoners uniting to confront a corrupt system through some organized competition or goal became a popular cinematic tool. All of this traces back to the success and originality of The Longest Yard. Number 2. Burt Reynolds wore a wig during part of the film. The Longest Yard has so many surprising and amusing behind-the-scenes details, one of which was the fact that Burt Reynolds, the film's rugged, charismatic star, wore a wig during parts of the movie. Though Reynolds was widely seen as a symbol of masculine confidence in the 1970s, he was also highly self-conscious of his thinning hair, even in his early 30s. By the time filming began, Reynolds had already started using hairpieces for some of his on-screen roles. The rough situation of some of the action-heavy football scenes, the rough prison setting, and the humid Georgia climate made maintaining his usual hair appearance a challenge. So, to keep his leading man image intact and consistent throughout filming, he opted to wear a toupee in some scenes. Ironically, Reynolds' tough, no-nonsense persona in the film made the idea almost out of place. He performed many of his own stunts, got physically bruised, and didn't shy away from the rough-and-tumble nature of the role. However, like many stars of his era and even today, appearance still mattered, especially in Hollywood. Reynolds later joked openly about his hairpieces in interviews, displaying his signature self-deprecating humor. In a way, it made fans love him even more for laughing at himself. So, while The Longest Yard may look like a gritty, sweat-and-blood prison football movie, a little Hollywood illusion was still in play. Number 1. Burt Reynolds wasn't the first choice for the lead role. Although it's hard to imagine The Longest Yard without Burt Reynolds playing Paul Wrecking Crew, surprisingly, he wasn't the studio's first pick for the role. Before Reynolds was cast, several other major stars were considered for the role, including Robert Redford, Steve McQueen, and even Paul Newman. Each of these actors has a bankable presence and box office pull in the early 1970s, which made them appealing to producers. However, some obstacles prevented them from being a part of The Longest Yard. Redford was reportedly not interested in doing a sports film, McQueen was extremely picky with his projects, and Newman had already played a convict in Cool Hand Luke. At the time, Reynolds had already appeared in the 1972 Deliverance, which catapulted him into mainstream fame. He had the charm, grit, and physical athletic nature producers were looking for, especially since the character of Paul Crewe was a former pro quarterback. Having attended Florida State University, Reynolds had played college football, making him one of the few real athletes in the running for the part. He didn't just play Crewe, he became him, and the role helped establish Reynolds as a top-tier Hollywood leading man throughout the 70s. So while Reynolds may not have been the first choice, he turned out to be the perfect one. What have you learned from these weird facts about The Longest Yard? Share with us in the comments. Don't forget to hit the like button and also subscribe to this channel. Before you go, watch the other videos on your screen.